guys, it's Olivia here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today I'm here to give you my March wrap-up. In the month of March I read 11 books and I had quite a few new favourites, so I can't wait to talk about those books with you. But to get started, I just want to shout out to Cara from Wild Book Garden for getting me this shirt for my birthday, which says "The trees speak Latin." I absolutely love it. It's a reference to the Raven Cycle, which is one of my all-time favourite series, and you better be ready because I am never taking this shirt off. Just kidding, but I am bulk filming today, so you're going to be seeing it quite a lot. So let's get down to the books. The first book that I want to talk about you already saw in my 24 hours of reading straight vlog, but I'm just going to wrap it up here, and that is Heir of Fire by Sarah J Maas. This is the third book in the Throne of Glass series, and I'll just tell you briefly what the first one is about. We follow Selena Sardothian, who is an assassin, and she has been hired to become the king's champion. It's a competition between all these other assassins, but while she's at the palace for this competition, where she could earn her freedom if she wins, because she's actually currently enslaved in a prison, some of the competitors are slowly being killed off. By this book, this series has definitely come a long way from where it started, and I just have to say that this book was a mediocre read for me because it was such a training montage. The whole thing was just a training montage. You're getting quite a few different characters, so we're not just following Selena, but every single character, apart from Kale, seems to be having some type of training situation, which is just not the most fun to read about if you're reading a series. I did like Rowan, who is a new character who's introduced, and I did stop shipping Team Kale. R.I.P. Team Kale, but he had a lot of emotions to work through, and his storyline was still my favourite in this story because he's definitely got a lot of things to work through and figure out. So I didn't find this book exciting. The content of it was boring, but the characters are getting pretty good. We'll just see where this world goes. I'm going to be continuing the series, so stay tuned for more thoughts. Then I would like to talk about my first 5-star of the month, which is a new favourite, and that is Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi. Again, if you watch that vlog, you can see that I read this one in a single morning, in one sitting, and it was fantastic. So Children of Blood and Bone follows our main character, and she lives in a world where a king is a ruler and he is terrible. He's like a tyrant. Before, Orisha magic used to exist in this world and they lived in tandem and everybody was happy, but then the king decided, because not everyone has magic, he wants no one to have magic. He oppressed them, magic was gone from the world, but now there's been a chance where magic can come back. So lots of people had problems with this one, but I just shamelessly loved it. And while I think the pacing was a little bit off, and I think some of the characters went in directions that seemed a bit out of character for them, aka Amari, and there was a character who came back in this series who I just feel like they shouldn't have done that, let the dead stay dead. But anyway, in other ways, this book was really good. I liked how it's a fantasy book but still had time to focus on cultural appropriation. It really did a good job of showing the grief that some of these characters are feeling, and I just felt like the plot still had lots of twists and turns even if the pacing was a bit off, so I was still shocked and outraged by every plot twist and turn, and every time I thought this is the grand one, there was another one, and that just kept me intrigued all the way through. I really liked how our main character kind of develops in this one, how she feels her anger, how she feels her sadness, and how that does direct her decisions because, hey, emotions do get to people. I just thought it was fantastic, and the world building and magic system in this is so good. The next book I have to talk about is The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins, and again, this was just a middle-of-the-road book for me. I'm trying out thrillers, but this was not a good place for me to start. So we follow our main character, who is an alcoholic, and she takes the same train to work every morning, and she just looks out the window and sees the same couple in the same house, which is alongside the tracks, and she kind of has made up this whole life for them. But one time when she's passing by on the train, she sees something that's quite disturbing, and then she gets involved in their lives and involved in the crime and everything like that. So I hated the writing style in this one. It felt like I was reading from a robot's perspective. It just felt very stiff and unemotional, and I couldn't connect to the characters. And I liked how the character focuses were on the female characters, but even though the writing style didn't work for me, there is one thing that I'll say for this book, and that is that it's very addicting. I still kept turning pages. I still wanted to know how everything would work out. I have heard people say it was predictable. It wasn't entirely predictable for me, but some elements of it were. And the reason why this was just a middle-of-the-road book for me was, despite the writing style, I was enjoying it to some extent, but then the end happened, and it's just every character in this book is insane, like far too insane for it to be realistic. Like, not everybody's that crazy, and it just blew my mind and it just wasn't quite for me. The next book I have to talk about is The Mercies by Kieran Millward Hargrave, and this is a witchy book that is set in history, historical fiction during the witch trial times. I can't remember exactly, but I believe it's either set in Norway or Finland, which they call Finnmark back then, and we follow these two women. One of them has become the wife of this religious figure, so he is being sent to a faraway small town to kind of hunt out the witches, and then the other one is following a girl who lives in that town, and yeah, their worlds collide and the witchcraft trials and hunts are on. So there's a lot of girl on girl hate, but that just comes with the witch trials. It was the time in history where that was very prominent, but at the same time as it's showing a lot of girl on girl hate, I did like it showing girl friendships and also some LGBT plus themes, even though it's historical fiction. Always appreciate seeing that in historical fiction. So I did like this book. It's a very slow, atmospheric book. Think The Familiars by Stacey Halls. It's that kind of slow, atmospheric, captivating, very thick in its landscape being involved in the book, and it reads really nicely. However, I just felt like it was a bit too slow for me, and everything accumulates and happens very, very quickly at the end, and I would have loved if we had some more of that exciting drama that kind of happened a bit more earlier in the novel. I felt like everything was just too much rushed and there was just too much exposition and build up in the beginning. I found that it was one of the most prominent books that showed the true horror of the witch burnings for me, and I will leave some triggers down below because it has quite a few. Then for my big book of the month, I read The Other Bennet's Sister by Janice Hadlow, and this, boy, is a big book at 658 pages. So this is kind of like a Jane Austen fanfic. And it's brilliant. So in this one we follow Mary Bennet, who is the last sister who stays at home, and it happens after Pride and Prejudice, and it's basically about Mary's story and her romantic journey. That's all you really need to know. I kind of liked checking in with the other Bennet sisters and seeing where they'd gotten to in life, and I also really liked Mary. She's such a relatable character. She's very bookish, she's very quiet and shy, but she also just doesn't have much faith in herself and her appearance. She always puts herself down, and I love seeing how much she developed throughout this book and built up herself and where she ended up going. The romance got a bit frustrating at some point because there is a miscommunication problem, but that was only one moment, and I really liked seeing her, you know, find her own way. I will say that this book did not have to be 658 pages long. A lot of it could have been cut down and just cut out, but it was still a very good read, and thank you to the Chronic Bookworm on Instagram for buddy reading this one with me. I had a lot of fun. Then I have to mention The Murder of Rodger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie, which I read for Sherlock-a-thon. I kind of failed at Sherlock-a-thon because a lot of things happened, like me needing to emergency fly back home and move, but I do want to mention which prompts I completed down below, and I had a lot of fun doing Sherlock-a-thon. So The Murder of Rodger Ackroyd is just a typical Agatha Christie mystery. A murder has happened. He was the only one in the room, completely locked doors, and Poirot is back on the case. I really don't want to give you more than that because I don't want to spoil anything, but I just want to say this was fantastic. This has definitely become one of my new favourites, and actually one of my ultimate 3 favourites of Agatha Christie. It was just so good, unpredictable, didn't see it coming, but she left enough clues for us, so I can't wait to reread it and know all the clues and pick up on them. It was just so good, and I love Poirot. He was just as dramatic and over the top as ever while still solving the case, and I loved his insights to character and people and how he looked at them. It's just... Agatha Christie really does it for me. Then I listened to the Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes, and this is by Arthur Conan Doyle. Stephen Fry reads the audiobook, and this was a collection of short stories that leads up until a main event. I guess most people don't know unless they've read Sherlock Holmes, so I don't want to spoil it, but the end short story in that collection in particular is very important for the Sherlock Holmes fan-based storyline, and I really did enjoy this collection. However, there is one short story in this collection that is incredibly racist. So racist, I was shocked when I was listening to that mystery. So for that I did have to penalise the book some because I don't deal with racism. That's just we don't like racism around here. We don't like discrimination. So I did not like that short story at all. But then the end short story was just so good, and it showed the friendship between Sherlock and Watson so much, and it just accumulated. In this short story collection, we finally get to meet Sherlock's brother, Mycroft, and we finally get to meet Sherlock's enemy, Moriarty. So there was a lot going on to make me love it, but alas, there was also something in it to make me hate it too. Then for class, I read Paradise Lost by John Milton. However, despite me reading this one for class, I have been meaning to read it for years, so I kind of was very happy to finally get to reading it. So this one is a gothic kind of story which follows the story of Adam and Eve, and it's just basically retelling the story of Adam and Eve but including Satan's perspective on the matter, as well as the angels and Adam's and Eve's, and it's really interesting. It's kind of a Christian epic, so think of that kind of long form poetic novel-y type of situation. That's what this one is, and the writing just, it's the kind of writing that I love, and I loved all the references to the biblical story. As a Christian, I did recognize a lot of the Christian orthodox beliefs kind of being translated into this one, being questioned, being dived, being discussed and developed, and it was so interesting to hear from Satan and what happened. I don't think I'm articulating quite how much I love this book very well, but it was so good. It was everything I wanted from a book that I'd been meaning to read for a long time. I'm very happy. Joe Sinker's Constellation by Helen Garner. This is Australian literature, and I read it for my Australian literature class. It is also true crime because it follows this horrendous murder case where this girlfriend murders her fiancé, boyfriend. Before she does so, she hosts a dinner party and tells all of the guests that she is going to kill herself and also kill her other half. However, she kills him and fails to kill herself, but also is very dodgy about the whole situation, and it follows the court case and everything that follows thereafter. And I don't think I'm cut out for the true crime genre, not because this book was awful, but because every true crime book I've read so far, I just end up so frustrated at the law and angry, and that anger doesn't go away because I feel like injustice has been done. And yet this book, while it does follow the events and it does follow what happens afterwards, the author took a lot of time to talk to everyone involved, including the judge who makes decisions, including people who chose to go to the dinner party, and you get to see everyone's motivations and you start to emphasize for everyone, and I didn't even enjoy that because I was angry at the same time. I feel like it did a good job of discussing the grief that the family who have been affected by the death of their son feels towards the end, but my main problem was the narrator and how it was chosen to be written, because it felt so dry. For a case that has so much depth to it, that has so much complexity, it was an incredibly dry and boring book. And that shocked me a lot, because that takes effort. And also, Helen Garner tries to be an ambivalent narrator and not choose a side, but it just felt like she wasn't really present, and you need a strong narration voice if you're going to be telling a story like this. Towards the end, she decides, you know what, I give up, I can't be ambivalent, I have emotions, I have feelings about this, and that's when the book got good, but it was just too little too late. So this wasn't quite one for me, but it was definitely an interesting case. I also read The Lost Arabs by Omar Sakar, and this is a poetry collection, Australian literature, and Omar Sakar is an Arab-Australian poet, and this was another favourite for me. If you've watched my favourite reads of 2019 video, you'll notice that his debut poetry collection was on that list, and I was just so excited to read more from him. This one is about, how do I say this? It's about his culture and his history. It focuses a lot on his mother and his grandmother and their relationship to where he's from, as opposed to him living in Australia, and how he can or can't reconcile those two worlds and those two cultures within himself. It's also about some of the suffering that a lot of Arabs go through, a lot of wars that have been waged in their countries that they have nothing to do with, about the fact that once they escape these war-ridden countries, they do have to build themselves up from the ground up from nothing, and they don't get some of the respect that other people do get, and it delves into all of that. And I think I said this in my best books of 2019 video, but his wording is just absolutely surreal. He puts words in place in poems in ways that I just would never have thought of before, and he just makes me look at things in a different light, and that is the the sign of a very true and very good poet to me. So I just absolutely loved this. Definitely recommend. Can't wait to read whatever he publishes next because he only has 2 books out so far. And last but not least, I reread Dr. Faustus by Christopher Marlowe. This was another read for class and I felt the exact same way about it, which was meh. That's all I have to say. It's about Dr. Faustus and he decides that he wants to know everything. He wants all the knowledge that he can possibly get. It's a play and he decides that he's going to make a deal with the devil and sell his soul in order to be able to do that. Talks about redemption, forgiveness, evil, that kind of thing, and it's just an okay play to me. And there you have it. Those were the 11 books that I read in the month of March. Please let me know what was your favourite book in the month of March. Tell me in the comment section down below and I'll be seeing you guys in the next one. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Hit the subscribe button to see more and don't forget to hit that notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video. And you know they say onwards and upwards. Excelsior! Because before Orisha magic... That's the note.